I'm Lauren Bernofsky. I am a composer of classical concert music. I write for all the various instruments, from solo string instruments and solo trombone, you name it, up through full symphony orchestra. So many combinations. Sometimes I'll write a piece for a trio of 3 brass instruments or string quartet. I also write for voices. I've written many songs, 2 operas, and music for film and ballet, and it's quite an interesting adventure as a composer to write for these various combinations of instruments. One of the pieces that I had a lot of fun writing was a setting of some text, and this particular piece that I have in mind was a commission from a vocal ensemble called Voces Novae, and they were able to get the rights, that is the permission, to use a text that was written by the novelist Kurt Vonnegut. This was a text that he had not published. It was a text to a requiem that he wrote, and this ensemble got permission to use it, to use the text, and they commissioned several composers, actually 8 to be exact, to each set a portion of this text. And this piece was written for chorus and a chamber ensemble, and one of the aspects of this project that made it easy and exciting for me was that I could take not just Vonnegut's feeling of what this text was about, but also the rhythms in the words that he used. I could use as the basis for the notes that I chose and the way I set his text. So it begins with the words, "O Cosmos," and I set that word to music the way one would speak it. So I said it, "Oh, Cosmos." So I put an emphasis on the cos of cosmos. I set it to, it's all D's except I go up a half step for the cos of cosmos, "Oh, Cosmos," because I want that syllable, cos, to come out more than the others. And I think that when a composer sets text in a way that closely follows the way one would speak, it's easier for the listener to take in the text. I'd like to share an excerpt of this performance for you with a scrolling score so you can actually watch the music go by and take a look at how I set the word, not only cosmos, but also the word deliver. So shortly after you hear "O Cosmos," you're going to hear the line, "Deliver without exception." So I'd like you to focus on the word deliver, deliver. It's got 3 syllables, and think for a moment how you would set that. Which syllable would have more stress? Deliver. said before, I write for all the instruments. So what does this mean for a composer? It means that we have a lot of homework to do if we're writing for an instrument that we're not intimately familiar with. The instrument that I play is the violin, and there are some instruments that are very closely related to the violin. Of course, the viola, the cello, the double bass, all the stringed instruments. I have a good idea of how to write for them and how the bowing works and fingering and how loud they can be and all the nuances that are possible with stringed instruments. Well, when you're considering writing for, let's say, brass instruments, very different. Brass instruments have an important consideration that strings don't have to think about at all, and that is breathing, right? So a violinist can easily play 4 pages of 16th notes without a rest, just keep going. Piece of cake for a violinist. Well, maybe not a piece of cake, but we can do it. But you cannot give something like that to, say, a trombonist, because a trombonist needs to take a deep breath, expend that air as they're playing a line, and then they have to take the instrument away from their face just for a brief moment to take in more air. So that is something that I have to keep in mind, and if I don't, as I'm writing, no trombonist is going to play my piece, right? Another consideration for brass instruments is that they use the muscles around the mouth. It's called the embouchure in brass. And they use those as they play, and it's a very important part. They actually can determine the different pitches, not just with the slide positions in the trombone or the valve positions on, say, a trumpet, but they actually can choose different notes based on what their muscles are doing. And as you know, with muscles, they get exhausted after a while. You have to rest every now and then. So when I'm writing for brass, I have to be very careful to give them short rests in places where they need to take breaths, and also some longer rests here and there because they just need to rest their chops, as they call it. Of course, woodwinds have some similar considerations to brass. Yes, they take in the air, but there's some different things that woodwinds can do that brass can't do as well. For instance, flute has a lot of agility, so they can play up and down scales, and they can play really high and play notes really quickly. And so that's something that I keep in mind as I'm writing for flute, because that's something that it just sounds great when you give that to a flute player. They're happy to get that too. I'd like to share some of an orchestral piece that I wrote. It's a movement from a ballet suite called 3 Portraits of a Witch. When I say ballet suite, I mean it's orchestral music that was originally played during a ballet. So it was conceived for ballet dancers to dance to it. And the particular movement from this suite is Wild Ride on a Broomstick. And as you'll see, I write some sections that feature the strings and others that feature the brass, others that feature the woodwinds, so you can hear the different ways that I write for these different groups of instruments. one single employer, but I make money from several different sources. One of them is commissions. So if there's a performing organization or an individual performer that would like a piece created especially for them, they will sometimes contact me and say, hey, I'd like a piece for flute. I'd like it for a recital, maybe around 15 minutes long, make it virtuosic. I'm going to be taking it on a recital tour. Or maybe it's a chorus saying, hey, we have a 25th anniversary coming up and we'd like a piece to commemorate that. So there are a number of reasons that performers will commission composers. Sometimes it's an opera troupe. We're going to be going into the schools and we would like a 30-minute opera that would be great for kids grades 4 through 6 and make it funny, make it interesting. And anyway, so I get these specifications for what the piece should be like, and I find out the difficulty level and what instruments am I writing for, what voices am I writing for, and then we draw up a contract, a commissioning contract that lists all this, and then I sign it and the commissioning party signs it, and there's always a deadline by which I need to get the piece done, and of course an agreement of payment for that because I need salary to be working. Sometimes it takes me 1 to 6 months to write a piece. If it's an opera, something longer, it can take a year or so. Another source of income for me as a composer is performance royalties. So if I have a piece being performed publicly, very often I can get performance royalties from that. There are 2 major performing rights organizations in the US. One is ASCAP, the other is BMI. BMI stands for Broadcast Music Incorporated, and it's a performing rights organization that finds out what ensembles are performing music by living composers, and they will distribute a royalty from that to the composers. So major performing organizations, let's say the Boston Symphony, they're going to pay BMI for a blanket licensing agreement every year for permission to perform music by these composers, and in turn, after they do play pieces, BMI is going to take a look at what they performed and then make a payment to composers. And it goes not just for major orchestras, but it could be a college performing ensemble, it could be a professional flute player who goes on tour and is playing recitals. So it doesn't even have to be a large organization, it could also be individual performers. So that's another way that I can make money as a composer. A third way is publication royalties. So after I write a piece of music, if I don't want to do all the work of trying to publicize it myself, I give it to a publisher and hopefully they'll accept it. And if I'm so lucky that they do, I send another contract with that publisher, and it means I need to sign over the copyright to the piece. So now they own the piece, which can be a little off-putting, just the idea of it at first, but I'm completely comfortable with it now because when I give my piece to a publisher, not only do they go through it to edit it and make sure that it's in the best possible shape it can be, but they do a lot of work to publicize the piece. In the case of some of my educational string orchestra music, these publishers like Alfred, FJH, Grand Mesa, they will literally hire an orchestra to make a great recording of my piece, put that on their website and on the website of various music retailers like J.W. Pepper, and it's a great way of promoting my music and letting the world know what's out there. The publication royalties are only 10% of the sales. So if, let's say, FJH sells a piece of mine for $50, I'm only going to get $5 of that when they sell it, but it's still worth it to me because that's a lot of time that I didn't have to spend publicizing my piece, and FJH can sell so many more copies of it than I do, so it's definitely worth it. I have a couple examples of some of my publications I can show you. This is Rufus and Rita. It's a young audience opera. The publisher of this is Theodore Presser. They hired an artist to do that great cover art. Rufus is a dog and Rita is his owner, and I was really excited about the way that cover looked. And here's Twilight Reverie. This is a string orchestra piece. FJH is the publisher. Just give you a little peek inside it. First we have the score, and this all comes out. So this is the score that the conductor is going to work from, and the rest of this are the individual instrumental parts. That's the violin one part that I took out right there. So whenever I can, I do give my music to publishers because they can do a lot better a job getting it out to the world than I can. I started composing when I was 16 years old. I was a violinist, and I entered an arts high school in New Orleans, Louisiana. That's where I grew up. The name of the school is the New Orleans Center for the Creative Arts. Again, I went in as a violinist, and the music theory teacher there, his name was Dr. Bert Bro, he introduced me to composing. So he put me in a little composition class. There were maybe 6 of us, and he gave us a composition assignment. He said, here are 5 notes. Take these notes, write a little melody. You can change the order of them, you can change the octave, but stick to those 5 pitches that I'm giving you. And I went home and I thought, come on, I'm not a composer, but I did my assignment. So I came back in a week and I'd come up with a little melody, maybe just 2 or 3 measures. And he took a look at it and said, oh, actually that's quite good. And he gave me another assignment for the next week, maybe a little more complicated for melody with a little accompaniment to it. I was writing for piano at that time, and he continued to encourage me. And some of my classmates also saw what I was doing. They said, wow, that's actually a really good melody you came up with. So slowly it started sinking in, the idea that I actually have some aptitude for writing music. And I found it fascinating that each person in the class had their own distinct voice. Even though we were only given 5 notes to work with, everyone's piece had a different sort of flavor to it. When you think about people's handwritings, everyone's handwriting is completely different, right? And I find that absolutely fascinating. And it works the same way with our voices as composers. I went off to college as a double major in violin and composition. And that was a 5-year undergraduate degree, 5 years because it was a double major. And after that, I went on as just a composer. So I did a master's degree and a doctorate in composition. Now, I wouldn't say you need to have a doctorate or even a master's degree to be a good composer. In fact, some of the best composers I know have actually never had a composition lesson in their life. So how does that work? Well, they still learned a lot about music, just not through composition lessons. They learned because they were advanced on instruments. The same with me. I was very serious about playing the violin all the way up through college, and through my violin playing, I was able to be really close to so much great musical repertoire. I could play violin concertos and in string quartets and full orchestras, and I could play in orchestras that accompanied choir, and I had so many fantastic musical experiences through my violin playing that I got to see a lot of the best classical music up close. So that's my recommendation for anyone interested in getting into composing. Take playing your instrument really seriously, because that is the best way of learning about music. I invite you all to try your hand at composing. It could be just a little melody that you write for your own instrument, or maybe you'll even like to write a duet that you play with a friend. It doesn't have to be officially notated in any way. You could just come up with your own system. Maybe it's just writing down letter names to remind yourself of what the melody sounds like. Anyway, give it a try. You never know, you might be quite a good composer yourself. And at the very least, it's really fun trying it. Well, I'm going to leave you with a little duet that I wrote for violin and clarinet called Blue Monkey. Blue Monkey is the name of a pancake at a little restaurant in upstate New York, and the pancake had blueberries and bananas in it, and it was written as a wedding present. The bride was a violinist and the groom was a clarinetist. Hope you enjoy it.